All right. So this is, as we were just talking about, the name of this is the Irvin Music Studio weekly live stream from 8 to 10 on Wednesdays. Working on it. Yeah.
We're here.
I'm Sam Irvin. We're here in Irvin Music Studio in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm here with Rob Gray.
Hello, my name is Rob
AKA,
Gray.
you are. Yeah. AKA Captain Hyperdrive. And you collaborate in, help produce Bombastic.
Bombasic.
Bombasic.
Mhm.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Hold on. Tell me more about that in just 1 second, but let me
Sure.
get this light situation
Oh, the ring. There we go.
worked out properly here. Yeah, gotta get the ring. Gotta get the mood lighting going on. This is gonna make us look much younger, more
There we go.
debonair.
That's why I like it.
All right, yeah. So I wasn't sure how to put that on the flyer. Like, works with Bombasic.
I would
or
say like one
produced with-
half of Bombasic. You know, it's a duo.
Yeah,
and,
that works.
I guess I've never described it, but it's an ensemble of sorts too. You know,
Right.
with Brucey B is known to be on the keys, and now I've implemented a little like live drum pad, so that
Mhm.
having that dynamic. But yeah, we're a duo, and like before anything, we're friendship. It's a friendship. We've been friends since 14 years old, like around 13, 14 years old.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it stretched back that far.
Yeah, it's all going over 20 years, and
Nice.
it's pretty special. We just celebrated Bruce and his wife Carolyn's marriage,
Mhm.
and that was pretty cool to like be like, wow, I've been friends with you 20 years, and like a week prior is when we threw our album release show. So just a lot of cool things coming to fruition, and just seeing the journey that we've been through in the past 20 years as friends, and then getting into music and where we're at now, and how much more of adventures we have.
Yeah, you've got a long stretch of road ahead of you. I hope.
Yeah,
That's,
I think so.
I hope that for you.
Thank you.
And Bombasic. That was a close one.
No, you're fine.
I-
How about this is I'll explain what the name is, because people trip up and say bombastic or bombastic.
Right. Bombastic is a word.
It is a word, and the definition of it actually means cacophonous or little to no meaning. So because I didn't know that term until people kept mispronouncing our name, and I looked it up. I was like, shit, that's the opposite of what we want this name to mean.
Mm-hmm.
But bombasic, it was a word that we made up of. You know, I don't think people say it that often, but the bomb, like I would say a '90s, late '80s term.
Yeah, or the bomb diggity.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
nobody's saying that nowadays. So
That's right.
that's one part of it, and then the word, we thought, since this music is going to be, at that time we were making hip hop music, we wanted to show.
What is that time? When did you start using Bombay? I'm gonna get that best host award this year.
You used to go call us BB.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
Let's see. It was around 2000. I think it's been over 10 years, so maybe 2010, 2011.
Okay, gotcha. Let's check and make sure we're not
So,
muted.
BB.
Okay, that sounds good. Also, I forgot one more thing.
Yeah.
2010 or 11, so more than a decade
Mhm.
with this particular.
Project.
Yeah,
Ooh, nice touch.
gotta have something organic in there. Yeah.
Mhm. Love it.
Yeah, that's a long stretch. That's cool. And you guys do like dance, like beats, like dance music.
Yeah, instrumental.
But it's pretty psychedelic too. I was listening to the new Bollywood drop today, and it was like turning my mind inside out. Yeah, it's really cool.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
That's
Slick stuff. I'm not sure are you using like backwards sort of sounds in it? Because it really sounds like that sometimes.
oh yeah. There's definitely reversing and chopping and manipulating the sounds. Just adding cool effects to to make it mind melting, because I've always appreciated the sound design and that type of like surprise aesthetic with the arrangement, things to drop out and in and like swoop through.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is, you know, being at these concerts or festivals where people are on psychedelics, and like kind of just like tripping them out, like see what the music, like in a movie when people are like, whoa, when you hit him with some stuff that's like cool, like thick bass or this drop, people will literally be like, "Oh!" You can hear it in the crowd, and
Oh man.
that's one of my favorite moments as a producer is to get that like, "Oh," this like really audible reaction that like they're watching a movie.
Yeah, that's got to be so gratifying for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you're out there with Bump Basic, and as Captain Hyperdrive, are you doing solo stuff too? And
Oh yeah.
are you doing? Let's list it all out. What are you up to these days?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. So we just had this Bollywood album with Bomb Basic release. It was our first album in like about 2 years. We basically were looking for new inspiration of sounds to choose from. We're a big sample based artist because we started as a hip hop production, or not even duo. We're in this hip hop group with about 5 guys back in the day, but finding something different than that's a little outside of our range. That's not even American music. So we started watching Bollywood movies and started finding these amazing sounds.
yeah, it's a huge genre. There's so much material to pull from.
Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away, as you probably know, the musicianship of those players is like top of the tier for like on sitar and the tabla, like all these crazy rhythms and the ways they play it and how the music is different, obviously from Western music, and just like what I loved about the Bollywood music is really, really tasty, catchy melodies, credible vocals, and like really banging beats, like crazy grooves, and almost like hip hop aesthetic with the beats, but not quite as like heavy. So we were able to. It was almost just too easy when we started working with that.
Yeah.
So we had this huge album release party that we've been working on for over about 3 years, before the pandemic, basically. I remember summer 2019 to do it at ISIS Music Hall, which is in West Asheville. And the reason for that is it's an old movie theater, and I wanted to match the aesthetic of having a Bollywood movie album release at an old movie theater. So
and did you have visuals and stuff? Like anything playing on a screen behind you guys?
we didn't, but we did hire a stage designer. He goes by Sacred Element. He is a gentleman in town, Maurice, and he does all the Leaf stage design, and
okay, yeah.
he actually got to travel to India for 9 months, and when I asked him to recreate, he built a new stage for our set. So we had a whole DJ table and this whole huge back piece behind us, and it had some Hindu symbols that he felt would be appropriate to go in line with Bollywood like film and stuff like that. So that was really cool.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I wish we had I'm not prepared as a host at all to to cardboard. Like, oh yeah.
Well, they I will just put up the socials, and I had it filmed and photographed, so there'll be media coming up.
Oh, cool! But it's not quite released yet. The video of the whole event.
No. Unfortunately, my friend who shot the film got COVID and got pretty sick, so
of course
that's
it's
a little
going around. Yeah. And I guess the music's easy enough to sync up, right? Because you were did you get a feed of the music the whole time, or was it, if you perform, I mean, you're doing live stuff like your drum pad and whatnot, so
we actually didn't have that recorded. No.
Oh, no? Okay.
We we should. We don't do it too often, but I always guess I forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those little Zoom recorders.
We have one of those.
A couple, yeah.
We may have done it once, but at all of our different sets, I would be like, "Did you record that?" We're like, "No, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah, at least for like the video, like you're talking about, like that promo. Cool. So that went really well. Was it a big turnout?
Yeah, that was. It was the biggest production I've ever put on. We had 16 performers. Over 10 of them were female dancers. And then we had Will Frank on sitar. I'm not sure if you know him. Amazing musician, amazing violinist, incredible musician in town.
Cool. Sitar is super neat.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool, like the way we're sitting, really able to get that chemistry of vibing, like being really like kind of sitting in a triangle. So just really bouncing that energy off of each other.
Yeah.
We had this singer Trevor Darden from Buffalo Kings. He's new to Asheville. Met him busking. Crazy voice. Kind of looks like Lenny Kravitz, afro, just
Hmm.
handsome dude, great build, but just a killer voice. And I made an R&B track with him, so we performed that. So it was a totally different vibe, changed from the Bollywood and bass stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
In between is like an interlude.
yeah, like, well, we just kind of kept changing the vibe. Like, had the Bollywood stuff first, and we had two performers that, one woman was trained in Bollywood dancing,
Okay.
and and Bhangra, and she's traveled over east to learn different styles of dancing. She choreographed two pieces to the Bollywood tracks, and we had another friend who learned Bollywood dancing for this show and choreographed two pieces. So that was like all in the Bollywood portion.
Hmm.
Then when we switched it up, we switched gears to be more of like the electronic, like dance heavy stuff. Um, and then we busted out during that performance. We had a portable pole brought up, and we had this dance troupe called 13th Hour Dance Company. And they specialize in pole dancing, so they were going off. My
Nice.
friend Danielle showed up.
With their own music.
No, to our music.
To
They're dancing
okay.
freestyle pole dance to our
Nice.
music. It was wild. My friend had like 8-inch LED heels come out, and she is incredible. Like spinning upside down, flying like a helicopter, and just like it was.
That's gratifying too. Like having people yell out, like just to collaborate with artists in other mediums. I think, and watching them like vibe on your music,
Totally.
that'd be cool.
It was. I mean, I'm a big fan of pole dancing. I mean, beyond the fact that it's just, it's beautiful women moving in a sexy manner. It is a beautiful art, and the strength that they possess is wild.
Yeah, I can't really hold myself on a pole. I don't think.
It's wild. So that was amazing. And then Trevor performed. Then my friend Rob, who's a rapper, who was in the original hip hop group we were all together with over 15 years ago.
Okay, cool. Is this the guy who you're like? There's like a hand drawing
Yes,
of the two of you. Okay,
exactly. Mhm.
gotcha.
That's funny. That's from an album that we made 10 years ago when I first moved to North Carolina. I lived with him,
Hmm.
and that's where we sampled all different Tracy Chapman music.
Oh, great. Yeah, I've played some Chapman before.
Yeah,
But I don't remember.
Fast Cars, Give Me One More Reason,
Change, something like
Changes,
that.
or
Changes.
Change. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great song.
Her
Yeah.
music is incredible. I just love that music. So we performed a medley of songs from that album because we made it 10 years ago, but we released it just last year.
Mm.
It's kind of sitting away. That's actually when we became Bomb Basic, Bruce and I, and that project. Even though we put so much effort into it, kind of went to the wayside because I started focusing on Bomb Basic.
Right.
So it took almost a decade. It did take a decade to come back around and release, but it was really special. It was really special to bring him out on stage and
You guys performed a song from that new release.
a whole medley.
Or
It was like,
the new old release.
yeah. It was a really cool. I built a medley of like 5 songs, and it was about 6 minutes long, but just like jumping into each other and flowing each other
Hmm.
to giving each profile, and then so we had that, and then there was a 5-person dance troupe that choreographed to one of my own pieces, which was Bananas, and they're called O Motion Collective, which they'll be performing at the Montford Park January 18th. They're having like a dance performance there, so highly suggest people check that out.
Nice.
So it was like a Cirque du Soleil event almost.
Yeah, that's a lot of activity for sure.
Yeah, and
Was it all pretty back to back? Like it kept flowing?
yeah, we had a 2-hour set, and it was all crammed into a 2-hour set, plus 2 supporting artists. Maurice also DJs, so he opened up as Morphonic, and then we had this amazing psychedelic bass artist, Dirty Wolves. We hired him to come from Austin, Texas, and
Okay, nice.
it was just an incredible night back to back.
I'm bummed I missed it. I didn't hear about it.
That's
but
all good.
when is the next one? The next Bomb Basic
So
outing.
it's good that you asked that. At this point, we're gonna Bruce and I will continue playing shows when they present themselves, but I'm really looking to pursue my solo project
Mm-hmm.
more. So I don't know when we'll be performing again. So I'm going to be focusing bookings with Captain Hyperdrive.
Yeah.
going forward.
Do you have anything on the books
I'm
as him? as that
not
project?
as of now. I have I just played a show at Deerfields last
Hmm.
Friday. It's like a local campground area over by us by the airport. Have you ever been there?
I've been invited there. They've got some burns happening there every now and then,
Hmm.
right? Is Transformers out there?
They don't have it there anymore, but
Oh,
they
okay.
had it there for years.
Gotcha. I think that's where I've heard of that from. I almost want to say my prom was there, but that doesn't sound right.
It's
um,
a beautiful, I biased because it's home to Asheville, but it's a gorgeous campground with two lakes, gigantic pavilion where they have the stage in. So even if it rains, like it's an elevated pavilion,
yeah,
you're gonna stay dry. And
as a performer
as a
or just
performer, and
as
it's a
everybody.
huge pavilion, could fit like 100 people in it.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a
nice.
big wood, gigantic one, and just gorgeous grounds. And yeah, it was a little crazy. For the first time in about 20 minutes into my set, the sub started smoking, and then the driver exploded,
Oh
or
no.
like went on fire and just died.
Too much too much groove, too much spirit in there.
It was a little, yeah. I, one big thing I understand because I went to audio engineer school and just been doing this for a while is just understand gain staging, and it was in the greens on my side. I don't know what happened, and I've never seen that before, but blew a nice subwoofer.
How it was one of theirs?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Who knows how long it's been there? Who's been driving it? Like
my friend
put
takes pretty
what
good
through
care.
it?
It was a nice like whole rack mount setup with the board and amps and limiters. I have no idea what went down.
Wild. Yeah.
So
Ghost in the shell. Ghost in the machine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, tell me about. So you said you're gonna focus your bookings on your solo stuff, but I want to dig into more of your like studio process and
sure.
how you're like writing stuff. Like I know, do you use the Voyager that you've got
Oh yeah.
very often?
It's
And
one of my favorite instruments. I love the feel of it. I really love the sound of it. Like I was talking with one of our good friend Paul and one of your previous guests, Paul Gata.
hmm
I think we were like, I think it sounds better than the Model D. Like it it just has this really fat sound, and I love how it looks. So I use that, and I have a Wurlitzer, which
okay,
I love using.
yeah,
Do you want me to describe like what's in my studio?
sure. Whichever direction you want to take it. I think I don't am only so familiar with your genre of music in general. I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask like, well, what do you use to get the bass? How many digital instruments are you using? Because I
Okay.
know when you're pushing out, bass is a fundamental part of what's happening and what needs to be heard. Sometimes using digital sources for the bass can be more controllable.
That's a
Um,
great point. This is exactly what I do. And if I use the Moog for bass, I will sometimes use a digital bass to like fortify the low end and
mm.
have more control over it.
So keep the Moog up above like 50 or 60, or I guess even above that, around 80 or
Yeah,
90.
yeah. Or it will land there, and if I don't use a digital um, instrument, I'll use a plugin, some multiple plugins like compression, distortion, saturation, and then one of my go-tos is the Waves R bass.
Mm,
It's just a way like you can control frequency and like the intensity and the volume of it, and like so you can. Sometimes I'm like I want a little more juice from the like sub part of the Moog, and I could throw that on there, and then it really boosts that end.
okay.
So that's a technique I love to use, and when making electronic bass music to really have, since it is a central part, I've been doing this for a while where you have like three up to 5 or 6 instances of that bass, and you like piece them together frequency wise.
Ooh, talk about that more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's say you have it, that's why like you can have simple bass lines sound so like wild and moving and like filling the spectrum where you, let's say you have just like dun dun dun, you can have, what I'll first do is have a straight sine wave sub, just real clean, have that like feel where it's hitting you in your chest, and can control that.
Yeah, down low, the lowest,
As
like
low,
the sub
yeah.
bass, the you know,
Mhm.
yeah.
It just rattles and just where you feel it, and like you somewhat get audible, but right when I throw that one will usually just cut like to 1K or 800K. Just no need for any of the high end or mid, even just, and then like maybe do some EQ around the 500, 500 range if it's muddy, figuring out where that is. But then I'll just simply duplicate that MIDI of that sine wave, and then I'll choose different sounds and do it individually one by one.
Okay, so no longer a sine wave.
Yeah, do something like I use Serum is a VST I like to use. Massive from Native Instruments. Omnisphere. Just any VST
And you're doing this in Ableton,
yes.
I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the loops, the accessibility of, I mean, that's what it's all about. The live factor. Are you using Ableton live when you're performing out?
No, it's more of like a DJ hybrid setup where I can DJ the tracks, but also built, since it's so customizable, built like a live rig where I have a MIDI keyboard set up to it, but I can like enable up to like 10 instruments and vocal samples, and that's what Bruce uses. Something with, it's more robust. It's like 25 to 30 instruments that he's like built over time, mapped out effects, and it's all on Ableton, and he's just playing keys.
Rack. So he's using Ableton more often, or just period when you guys are out performing. But you're using sort of pre-recorded stuff, but
on Ableton, yeah.
Oh,
like
okay.
the wave tracks of each song we produce, and we'll make special edits for live.
So you are using Ableton when you're live.
Yes, but not like
Oh,
as a, not in like a live where you can use the function where it's like the loops and stuff.
Okay, I now see what you're saying. Yeah. But when you're creating music, you're using those functions.
Yeah. Working with other producers, I realized that we use it a little differently, where there's the two different views in Ableton, where like it's like the arrangement view, which is the traditional like left to right, tracks up and down, you lay it out left to right, or
you can sort of see what's the full song is gonna look like.
100% all the instruments and the pieces of it. Or the view that Ableton has is I think it's called session view. I call it clip view too, because you just have all those, you can just create loops and then just line them all up, and
you create scenes or whatever. Each
That's
scene is the horizontal part of that view that is adding loops together. So each clip or loop is up and down, or maybe each scene is up and down.
I think each scene is up and down. I mean, the clips go up and down too, but you had it right where it was horizontal, and if you hit that, it'll select all the different clips on that one scene.
Yes, right. And so I interrupted you. You guys use it a little differently than other people do.
Yeah. A lot of people go to the left or right. I know a lot of people use that session view for live performance, so they can easily do loops and have effects built on there. But I like producing in that way, where basically producing in loops, and that way I can record a couple different bass lines before I commit to a specific one. Or if I want to have like a B section, have it change. And same thing with drum patterns or chord progressions, where you could just be like, here's my chords, and you can do a couple different chord progressions, and then I have the Ableton push, where then I can launch different drum grooves and basses to like kind of preview, be like, does this sound good? And once you have them all, because you don't know what it goes well together, but you create everything, and then you could just, that's fun, just like launching each clip and finding out like, oh, I didn't realize like this bass line fits better, because you might right away, I feel with the left to right arrangement view, you're committing. You usually have to commit, and even if it may not be the best one, you're just going to ride with it because that's how it's set up. But with the clip view, you have a lot to choose from.
Yeah, a lot of experimentation, a a lot of guessing and checking. What that seems like that would take up a lot of the creative time, is just sitting there and be like, does this work with this? You know?
No, it's more fun. Like I have a real fun time, especially with the push. After it's all created, and what I figured out with, because I keep it pretty simple, as far as like, because that's kind of just the framework of the song, because it's going to be 4 to 8 bars long, like just a basic loop.
Hmm.
I know, like, I'll walk away sometimes, and if I could like just have that loop going for a little bit, and if it doesn't like annoy me, I'm like, all right, that's a pretty solid idea. Like, I should commit with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
that's kind of like a test that I've realized I do sometimes, and just turn it up and walk in my room and like do some chores around the house, and it's still going. I'm like, all right, well, I can expand this idea because this main foundation is going to carry the song.
Yeah, it is good to spend some time with something. I like that picture you're painting of sort of an immediate test, but coming back to something a week later too, and a month later, and it's like, is this still? Do I like this? And I've got stuff that I'm working on that I'll go back like a month later and be like, all right, I don't know what I was doing with that, but then I'll come back to like 2 months later and it's like, oh, this is good. I see what I was going for there, you know. And so, you know, maybe the one me who didn't like it is just some segment of the population who's not going to like it in some metaphorical sense, you know. Um, but I think, yeah, I with the so much power at our fingertips. I mean, talking about the DAWs and all of the different VSTs and sounds that we could dive into, it often just becomes an issue of workflow and what do you want to invest that time in.
That's huge. Not getting overwhelmed by all of these. It's just like, I think what a lot of the general population experiences is overwhelming amount of choices. Whether it's like the content you can choose for news or entertainment, it's like endless. And or the classic like couple story of, we have this ability to have like all this delicious food around us, but I've know it's sometimes taking like half an hour to 45 minutes to figure out what we're gonna order.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Where are we going to eat? Yeah.
So that just like, so for the general public, imagine that like on a million times scale, because you have not only all these a million different sounds to choose from, but then you have a million different knobs to change it, and a knob could drastically change the sound. There's all different drum samples, all different loops, all like it's constant.
Yeah. And I think you're trying to get a tool belt going too. The only way to do it is to dive in and start doing the work, and then you get like, oh, like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, I need to fatten that bass, so I'm going to use this tool, you know. And you only need so many ways to fatten a bass. It's tempting to like want 50 different ways to make this problem go away, but you only need the one or two or three different ways, you know. Often trying to address one problem creates another problem, and so you have to say, oh, actually, I can't compress that whole thing that way. I need to just compress part of it, so I'll EQ, do a side chain, and I'll EQ it with a band and only compress that part of the sound, or multi-band compression has helped me out.
I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah.
I think it takes time to understand how to make those decisions, and I think that's what, like, when you get to pro level in anything, it's you got the tool belt tight, so you can, even though you have all these million things, you know what works, you know what is strong for you, and that's really helped with my workflow, even though I have access to all these choices. And sometimes, again, it's just like, I try not to get too caught up in like, how does the snare sound right now? Like, obviously I want a solid snare, but does the beat carry? Like, I can always change the snare out later, but I've heard there's like a classic EDM producer problem. It's maybe really in any genre, but I hear it more in EDM of like choosing the perfect snare, people like previewing snares for hours.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, it's such a big part. The snare is super loud. Like I've definitely like put out or finished a song, and then realized when I listened to it a month later, it's like, do I still like this? Oh, that snare is like slapping me in the face like every 2 seconds. But yeah, you can't obsess over any particular piece of it. Although I just got my snare mic'd on the drum set, and that has been huge to be able to mix the snare
Yeah,
independently of the overheads.
I'm sure that that really gives you a lot more control.
Do you think about I let's when you say you come up with these loops and you've got your specific example a moment ago is that you've got a bass line and then you've got some beats or bass lines and beats and you're trying to line them up and see what sounds good. So you're definitely thinking, bass and rhythm for this, and then typically are you using your Voyager or Wurlitzer for the melody, the melodic piece, sort of floating on top?
It really goes anywhere, and it can flip flop where I'll start with drums and bass to have that rhythm structure down, or I'll start with like a sample, whether that be from vinyl or ripped from YouTube, and really anywhere I could find it. Like there's some cool stuff I found on like clips from Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found this crazy breakbeat that I heard on Instagram. I was like, oh, I'm grabbing that. Um,
Talk about possibilities. I mean, it's all
it's
especially
endless now.
samples. Yeah.
So I kind of, before I go in, I don't go anymore really straight up blind. Like I'm just gonna go in the studio and see what takes. I really either like have a just like I don't want to confine it too much, but a vibe I want to go for. Is this gonna be, and especially with electronic music, as how I produce, it's probably not good for my brand, but I don't stay in a lane or have a. I think I have a certain sound that you could pick out, but I don't have a genre,
Mm-hmm.
and it ranges. I make stuff that's like floor to floor house, 128, 28 to 135, and then like down tempo, 60 to 70, and then psychedelic bass music, and then hip hop and trip hop and lo-fi, trappy stuff. It's really all over the place.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice. I know. Yeah. Why not be eclectic?
I
You know.
I mean that's I hear all this electronic music, and that's what excites me about it, is I'll hear a certain track like, oh, I'd love to make a track like that, and sometimes that's what I'll do. I'll go as far to even just buy the song and then bring it into Ableton and like figure out what tempo it is and maybe even the key, and then just pick apart how like it's made, and then do it my way, and then it just ends up being something that has that aesthetic or like in that genre, but it's not. I don't end up copying the song. I just like find these like, all right, that's how this works, and I feel like a lot of pop music is made that way because you have this reference of like what's worked, and heard songs where I'm like, they listened to this pop song and they're like, let's make something like this.
Right. Reference is the right word. Using a reference track in general to make sure that like your levels are all sounding correct
That's
is
big.
a super popular thing that I don't do enough at all. Um, but I like the idea of trying to reverse engineer sounds and stuff. That's a huge way to get more tools in your tool belt too. You know.
Do you? I don't. I've talked to other producers, and I feel like, and musicians, when you hear music, do you listen to it objectively, or do you break it down, like not like judge it, but being like, oh, that's like that bass line, and they're doing this key, or like that's a cool snare tone that they use. Like I wonder how they got that, or
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think I I analyze it in different sort of ways about how it makes me feel, first of all, and sort of what's the cultural context of what I'm listening to. Too. Maybe a little bit too much. I'm constantly in the
what does that
realm
mean?
of like what yeah, what is like the heritage that's being
Oh,
employed here, the ethnomusicology of like, oh, where is
whoa,
this coming from, you know? Does this make me feel like it's, a hip hoppy vibe, or is it employing some higher order jazz or classical like harmony stuff, you know? Um, I really should listen to new music more. A lot of my diet is academic. Like I'll listen to classical stuff a lot,
mm,
and I'll listen to like classic jazz albums. And I keep like a checklist to I go through various composers' symphonies one after another, just
Mm.
doing one a morning. And so those are, it's like walking by some flowers, and you don't think about the biology of like how certain molecules or chemicals are coming together to make those flowers. It's just like, oh, this is like a nice moment that I'm experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more often than not, when I'm listening to music, that's how I like to keep it. Even when I'm documenting or categorizing, keeping things um, like I know that this is, a German tune. It's this Beethoven symphony, and it's his fifth one. So he's like already done for, it's sort of in the middle of his arc of composership.
Wow,
I
that's
think about
cool.
those sorts of details, but I also try, and most often just let it be a unique moment to myself. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Because it's easy to get caught up in those details and sort of miss out on, I mean, part of what we're all doing is to just create beauty, like to create those moments that will never happen again. Not necessarily, I mean, recorded music can happen as many times as somebody presses play, but the moment of experience,
Oh yeah,
can only happen one time.
it's very true.
I don't know. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, 100%. That's just an interesting viewpoint, especially like the background and history of where the music's coming from. I guess I don't go there right away. Eventually, I feel like I go around to that, but maybe not right away.
And I don't have a super deep grasp of, I mean, the history of all of it is so extensive, but I like to think about influences or like the roots,
Mm-hmm.
of whatever is making a specific sound. But we live in like a postmodern sort of space where, like, when you're sampling stuff or pulling in all of these different influences, I think it can get sort of, muddy's not the right word, interesting, multicolored, tie-dye, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but I think living in the classical world and in the jazz world a little bit more, things are a little bit more like regimented. Like, is this song a bossa? Yep, we're gonna play it as a bossa.
That's right. That's true. Yeah, I've learned more about that because I have a coworker who's a jazz bassist, and uh, I mean, it's interesting. I've been in music, but I never heard like what standards were until he was like, "Yeah, we played these standards," and I was like, "Oh, I don't not never heard of that." And he described that, and then yeah, breaking down what style, and it's a very regimented in the way they practice too. It's a little different. So
hmm Yeah, that's similar in a way though, of like a reference. Like you've got the standard, and you're gonna play the song that was written by somebody else, but the way
mm,
that you play it sort of inevitably makes it different, makes it this new
that's
unique
true.
thing.
That's true. It's like the jazz remix.
Right? Yeah, over and over again. Let me double check and make sure that we haven't gotten muted. My camera hasn't frozen. Longtime viewers will be proud to see that there's been progress. And the microphone's holding. There has not been a technical difficulty yet. I'm pretty excited about
That's
that.
pretty good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Making progress. We are going to jam on all this Moog equipment in a moment. We've still got a while to chat though.
Yeah.
But let's talk about working at Moog together.
Oh
That
yeah.
was fun. That's how we know each other.
That
I
was
do try to ground that more upfront in the conversations about how I know you because we worked at Moog.
it was a great time.
Yeah, we met on the Mother line.
That's true.
Golden Mothers.
Did we didn't meet before, like when I was in the store, or did you get hired when I was already in?
Oh, we met while you were in the store.
Yeah, I think
forgot
so.
about that. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
And then,
cool. So that's how you know Paul.
Yep.
Um,
I actually knew Paul. He moved in with Bruce from Bomb Basic,
Oh, okay.
and I knew about Paul as Panther God, his producer.
Oh, right.
And I was like, "Oh, cool! You're living with Panther God." And I met Paul, and
That was a lot more kinetic, like up stuff than his new ambient.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say it's rooted in hip hop, so it wasn't like heavy dubstep, but definitely more powerful. And then he had another project called Paula Abdul or Paul Abdul. Paul Abdul. That's a play. It's a
not
it's a
not
play
Paul
on her name.
Abdul.
It's a play on her name, and it's that those were lo-fi beats. So those still had percussion, but it was way more stripped down and chill. And the Odorongo,
That's right.
his ambient project will help you go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's beautiful stuff.
It's pleasant. Yeah, it really blooms.
So yeah, I met him, and then he started working he got hired as a manager, didn't have any help. So it was oddly, I don't know if you ever knew this, but before I worked there, I was Paul's like assistant, like personal assistant.
What? I did not know that. Nice.
He had I guess he had enough money where he was just, and he was so busy. He was running a record label too, had his own project, had a girlfriend, and I mentioned that because at one point he's like, I need you to go buy flowers and bring to my girlfriend at her job. And I was like, sounds pretty good. Like sounds pretty like a strong move, me come in. And then after like a few months of that, he was still at Moog, and he told me, man, this is really hard to do by myself. I don't know if I could get you an internship there, but just start coming in. I didn't apply. I didn't interview. I didn't talk to anybody. He just brought me in. Granted, I wasn't getting paid a cent.
That's a con. Yeah.
It's a con.
That's a downer.
For 6 months. Almost 20 hours a week.
You really put in the time.
I was picking up cigarette butts in front of that place. Without anybody telling me to do it.
Wow. All right.
I was like, I'm getting a job here. I'm like,
really
somebody give me a job. And I knew I wanted to just work with Paul too. It's a totally different experience than working on the line. Yeah, I remember the first week I met Artemis Pyle, the drummer from Lynyrd Skynyrd. Just like, I guess he met Jason at a concert, Daniello, and he's like, this guy, his kid left his like hat here, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Just like me and Lynyrd Skynyrd, like the front desk,
right?
And yeah, I feel like I was there like for a few years before you got there.
Perhaps I started in 2015.
Yeah, it was like maybe a year or two after.
Yeah, it was a nice place to work. It was a good step up. You left specifically to work on music, right? Are you doing music full time?
No, I have probably shouldn't go into detail.
Let's not talk about that. But I remember you leaving because you had, or I don't know, you had this opportunity to live at a studio, right?
That was a job that never came to fruition, but
oh, really?
We won't go into detail about that, but I had to get out of Moog. It was, for me at that point, it was toxic.
Yeah. It was really nice I was like plowing through audiobooks while I was there, and I think really beefing up my,
nice.
my sort of, I don't know, it was just well read by the time that I left. But it was a real grind my last year there. Nothing against Moog, but just for me, I was like, I'm supposed to be playing music. I'm not supposed to be like building instruments for other people to play.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, it's like how much of an instrument you're building. It's like you're building a part of a thing. Like you're not even playing as an instrument. You're just building this one portion. And yeah, for something, it's the total opposite of creativity, where it's like endless possibilities. That job was like, there is one possibility we want from you. That's it.
This thing done this way.
Every time.
Yeah. Over and over.
Countless times. And then you do a great job, and they're like, let's do the same thing tomorrow and next week. And it just gets like you're in the Groundhog's Day, where you're just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just doing this.
Yeah, your possibilities are, what are you listening to on the podcast?
That's granted, I really got into podcasting during that period of time.
Yeah, and you had a podcast for a while. What was the name of your podcast?
We Were Young.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, I remember, I think I listened to a couple, but I definitely remember just seeing you posting about it. Did you stop that during the pandemic?
I think so. I think that was like one of the issues of, I think because the pandemic, it was a good, for me at least, a good way to just chill. Like, it was like, all right, you really, like, you can make music, which I did, But I even like pulled that back. But it's like you're not planning live gigs, you're not doing any of that. So I was just like, oh, after like just grinding for 10 years plus, I'm like, I'm just gonna take this opportunity to like actually just not go as hard as on this and just relax.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the podcast was wrapped into that. And I was just like, I'm just gonna like I was like, this is a lot of effort. I would again if I rearrange my schedule and figure things out. Like I would definitely like to do it again. I love the conversations I was having, and the concept for that was really just having a conversation with somebody, but honing in on their childhood and teenage years, and depending on their age, probably get in their 20s, 30s, because I talked to Michelle Moog, and she got to tell me about her as a little girl with Bob as her father, and then like later on in life, and that was really amazing to hear those stories.
Yeah, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good guest.
Yeah, it was a great guest. She was really interesting, and I feel like you can understand a person a lot when you hear about their upbringing and their influences and these monumental moments in their life. It's pretty cool. Like a bunch of my guests remembered like monumental moments in their life that they hadn't thought about since they happened when we brought it up and having this conversation.
Yeah, that's huge.
That was really cool.
That is cool. Nice. That I don't really want to talk about my childhood on this live stream.
No, we don't have to do that.
Okay.
I'll get you on my podcast when I start it up again.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. I'd love to be on. This is just an excuse to chat and do music for fun, like I was telling you earlier. I like how you said, coming from a podcast, you were like, you don't need a video. Like, why are you doing that? But I think it's helpful to like see the knobs that are getting turned on the Moog.
That's a different ball game.
Yeah.
More for the talking aspect, but I know a lot of people watch podcasts. But as you know, coming from where we were, it's like we couldn't have like our phone up and watch them, but the earbuds with the audio.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, I forgot to have Instagram catching the interview. Whoops. This feed goes out to YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch, but Instagram is impossible to do through the computer.
Right.
Or you can get like a software sort of workaround, but then it only does the phone sized cut of the video. So I've been doing that separately.
With your phone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's the one thing that I messed up.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
I think a big part of just the part about the podcast is people are interested in like the content and like somewhat the quality, but I think it's really like what's being put out there, and
yeah. I think hopefully we hit on some good stuff. I really wanted to dig in too, and I think we're getting pretty close to jam time, jam o'clock, but only barely scratched the surface about how you build a song with the bass and the various.
It gets wild.
Yeah, I'm sure. Way to tease it. But like, when you're thinking about a beat, are you thinking about the various roles of the drums, like have the hi-hat and the snare and and the toms, thinking about it in terms of a drum set, and do you just sort of fill out every song with the rhythmic, the percussion stuff, the bass, the chords, and the melody in those 4 quadrants? Do you think about sort of checking those boxes?
Yeah, I think that's always the underlining, and then because it's what I've noticed compared to where you have music that's made with like the band members that are there, usually 4 to 6, and then if you get a horn section, you could get up there, but you have to have a pretty big studio and a big board and all that. I've had tracks up to 80 to 100 tracks on there.
Yeah.
Where there's like those main elements that you mentioned, but I may have like the drum kit, and because it's endless, I'll have like a whole other drum loop that is a drum kit, but that's in a loop, and then I'll have like another kit that's like not traditional drum kit sounds.
And sometimes you just use these things for like a little drop or something, like 2 seconds of the song.
Oh yeah, or even
still
have
have
a quarter of a second when you get to the bass parts and you want to make it glitchy, like in chopping the audio up and like moving around, like it'll be like a like just little sections of something.
Of unique sounds that only happen like
Yeah.
that one time. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Exactly. And a cool way to do that I learned with the digital instruments and VSTs, like let's say I was telling you how building the bass with the sub line, and then you would want something to hit the other registers, so you duplicate that track, maybe move it up an octave, choose a sound that is like more like a wobble or like a hard saw bass, and then with that you can start recording that to audio, that MIDI, and then you could just like scroll through the presets, and it's recording
okay.
audio of like different clips of sounds, and then you can take that whole stretch of recordings and piece a new bass line with all different bass sounds.
Sick. Those are the sort of tips that I want to broadcast
Yeah.
out. That is a cool tool to have in your tool belt.
It's really fun because it's really easy, especially if you can buy VST packs, or there's just great presets on the thing. And that's why I'm like, I don't mind presets or menu diving, because with all this technology, you really are not going to, like, you're not guaranteed to make a hit. Like, you still have to take these sounds, even there's like sample packs the sample packs are crazy now. Like,
yeah.
And all the gear is crazy. All the presets sound great out the box, but it doesn't guarantee that you're just going to put it all together. You could have an amazing set of ingredients and have people set you up and be like, here's the recipe to make this crazy dish. Well, unless you're not trained, like, you're going to fuck it up every time. So you have to have skill. It's definitely easier. It's cool that the bar to access is much lower with technology and all these tools, but it's still like, it requires a lot of effort and like taste and skill to like get to that point to build a track that people want to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. There is a quality, like a sort of an objective measure of like, oh, that's good and that's bad. And you know it when you hear it, like, that is good. And I think it really has something to do, and from an arrangement standpoint, just keeping that ball in the air. I love thinking about it that way.
Oh,
Like volleyball or
following
something.
you already with that, yeah.
Yeah, the attention of the listener has to go from here to here to here to here. Sometimes you gotta hold their hand through it, or sometimes it's more jarring and you want that whoa from the audience, But just like, you can still drop the ball. No matter how many people are on the volleyball court, that ball's gonna get dropped at some point.
And then once in a while you got one that goes, that's fun when I find some of the tracks that I can arrange really quickly and finish, like, that has that feeling where like the ball's just up the whole time. You're like, wow, this sounds great, and like I didn't have to struggle for this. But not many like that though.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
some of the music, like I said, has taken, for some other reasons or not, 10 years. But I've have tracks I've worked on 6, 7, 5+ years that are now coming to completion.
Yeah, after we're done with our jam, hopefully we'll keep the ball up in the air for a little bit. I'll show you my big project that I'm working on, and it's taken forever, but it's gonna be worth it.
It's a musical project.
It is, yeah.
Solo.
It's I call it. It's gonna be an album called Consolidation, and I've just spent years taking like all the little bits of everything that I've written, sort of like samples, and arranging like a big sort of symphonic piece that moves through the various samples and organizing it all. And now I'm in the process of getting the lyrics, the poetry that I've written, and creating lyrical melodies that act contrapuntally to the melodies, the musical ideas that I've already written, and trying to wedge lyrics in between the parts that I've already written.
Damn.
It's time consuming, but it's coming along.
And you're tracking and recording all this by yourself?
Yeah, but first I'm writing it all out in standard notation.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Does that take a while for you?
It does, yeah. But it's also the way that I'm composing as well with the vocal melody. I'm writing out the notes on the standard notation.
Oh wow.
And thinking about what I want it to sound like, and then guessing and checking like, oh, does that work? Well, it interferes with like this harmony and that I've already written, so I need to change those notes, and it's a lot of sort of logical,
Almost
making
sounds like a
everything
math
fit.
problem.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
sort of an equation.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to jamming with you.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The Irvin Music Studio Wednesday night 8 to 10 weekly live stream, and we're
Doing
gonna
it.
take a brief break, and we'll be right back.
See you on the Moog 1.
Ah.